Good evening, everyone. We will have one board member joining us shortly, but in the meantime, we do have a quorum. My name is Stephanie Stevens. I'm the chair this year, and I'd like to call the David Douglas School Board to order for 8/12/2021 at 7:03 p.m. We will start with the Native American land acknowledgement. Today, I'd like to acknowledge the people whose land we are gathered on. Present-day Portland is located on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, Bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kaliapua, Malala, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. Let us also acknowledge the robust Native community made up of tribal diversity that originates from around the country and whose journeys have brought them to Portland by ways of forced displacement or seeking opportunities. Today, these same communities celebrate their heritage, showing resilience and tenacity that would be greatly admired by their ancestors. Before we begin tonight, we've had some sad news in our district since we last met. On July 20th, we lost Jenny Fernandez Suarez, who was a 7-year-old attending Gilbert Heights Elementary. She passed due to drowning in the Sandy River with her father, Rssl Fernandez Sanchez. And we want to give our heartfelt condolences to that family. We also heard very recently that Donovan Sally, who's an 18-year-old, died by homicide gunshot and was found in our Gilbert Heights elementary parking lot. He did attend David Douglas schools for several years, and so he will always be a part of our family. So we just want to take a moment in remembrance of these lives lost. Thank you. We'll go ahead and start with public comment. I believe that we have 4 folks who've signed up to speak today. Just as a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes of speaking time each, and we will not be responding to public comment during the meeting, but we will try to do a good job of responding to each one of these folks who require follow-up. That we'll either ask our administrators, our superintendent, or direct you in the right way if you need follow-up with your public comment. So we'll go ahead and start with, let's see, who is in? We have anybody, Derek, with public comment who has been in yet? Or should we do them one at a time?
I am looking and I see
I have Finn Sturgill, Zamaria Sawyer, Tarian Kimmons, and Casey Rodriguez as folks who signed up for live testimony.
and all I see is Kimmons.
All right.
So we'll start there and I'll move over.
Is it Terry Ann or?
It's Taryn.
Taryn. Welcome, Taryn. Do we have our, okay, go ahead.
Something I enjoyed about online school is how friendly everybody was. When I first got there, I almost instantly made a friend, and me and that friend still talk currently. The second thing I enjoy about online school, or sorry, outdoor school, or the summer school, was that the teachers running the last few days of the outdoor or the summer school were very kind and helpful, especially because I didn't go to the outdoor school, and it was very fun when I stayed at the actual school. And the last thing was about how the teachers were keeping a nice and clean and safe environment for all the students. I remember a bunch of teachers telling other students to keep their mask up, and I saw a bunch of teachers sanitizing everything. And so,
Thank you so much. And just so all y'all know, we really appreciate you being here. We wanted to hear how the David Douglas summer program went because so many kids had that opportunity. So we're so glad that you were able to join us and tell us your experience. And how you felt about it. Were there any, so thank you so much for coming tonight. We appreciate your testimony. Were any of the other folks who signed up available to be moved over? Derek?
Board Chair Stevens, I do not see anyone on the attendee side that's scheduled to speak. I do not see Finn or Casey or Zamira,
Okay.
excuse me.
Great. All right, well, thank you. I do want to see, I don't think we have a student board member today from Student Council, yeah? August is kind of a hard meeting to have input, so we understand. Okay, well, thank you very much. Moving on in the agenda, we are going to declare a brief recess in order for Pat to conduct a public hearing. And then following this hearing, the meeting will be reconvened. So I declare a recess. Where can the public find it if they're interested?
Well, it's still is a little bit in draft form. What was sent to you today was our first draft. We're sort of vetting that and going through it and making sure that it is exactly what we want it to be. I believe it needs to be submitted, and maybe Pat, you remember, but I think it was the 23rd of August. So once it is finalized and submitted, that will be available on our website for anyone to view.
Okay, great. Thank you for that information. I have received a text from our superintendent, Ken Richardson, who says there are some folks who are interested in providing public testimony on this. And so I will close the board meeting and reopen the public hearing. So,
Stephanie,
yes.
I'm sorry. I apologize. So, and I apologize to the public. This is Zoom. We're kind of trying to navigate this as we move forward. So, actually what we have is we have an individual that was here to give live testimony about summer school that's coming in as a different name, right? So I believe Lacey might be Zamira's parent is kind of what we're finding out here. So once we're done with this hearing part and you put us whatever direction, I think it'd be great to go back and hear from her if you're okay with that.
Okay, as long as we don't have any other hearing, anyone to testify in the public hearing. It sounds like we don't. So again, I will close it, reopen the board meeting, and invite, go back to public testimony and invite anyone who is waiting for public testimony to be put in our meeting. Apologies, it's hard when we can't see your face. And we do intend to be back in person next month, just like our kids. So we will be open and available at that time. Hopefully it'll make it a little easier. So who do we have? Derek?
I believe we have Zamira. I'm going to move over Lacey. I believe that is, I was told that is Zamira's family. So.
Oh, okay, great. Sometimes it's hard to tell with Zoom. Are you there?
Yeah.
We can't really hear you. Can you speak up a little? Oh, hi.
Hi.
Now I can hear you. Welcome, and sorry for making it super awkward for you, but we're glad you're here. You can go ahead anytime you like.
Hi, my name is Maria. Summer school is not what I expected it to be when my mom told me I was attending summer school. I was very mad, especially because I had to do swimming, which ended up being my favorite part of summer school. Summer school was a lot of fun. I made a water park, painted rocks, and made a pizza restaurant. My favorite part of summer school was swimming with my friends and teachers. Summer was not as stressful as I made it out to be. If my mom told me I was attending summer school next year, I'd be excited. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity opportunity to attend Menlo Park Summer School.
Yay! Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to hear from you and other students who. Hi.
Hi.
Are you mom?
Yeah.
I'm a mom that had two former Menlos in summer school too. We're not excited about it. Ended up having a great time. So I can relate to that. Thanks so much for coming today. We always love to hear from students and families.
Thank you for having us.
Board Chair Stephen, I'm
Yes.
going to move over Heather Craig. She was a summer school principal. She's not on the list, but maybe might be a parent, or so I'm going to promote her right now.
Please. Heather Craig, can you hear us?
I can. I was just here to support Zamaria in her speech for summer school. I was a summer school principal, so she did a fabulous job. Good job, Zamaria.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. So I assume there aren't any other folks who had signed up for public testimony. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay, perfect. All right, then we'll move on with agenda item number 4, which is invited public input. We've asked David Douglas Aquatics Club to come and give us a presentation. We've heard a lot about our pool and the Aquatics Club and David Douglas Swim, and we wanted to get a little bit more information about that program and how the pool is being used, and give the board an opportunity to ask any questions. So we'll go ahead and turn it over. Not sure who in the group would like to start. I know Derek's moving folks over, so takes a minute. Welcome.
Okay, I believe that we have James Bowe moved over, Bobby moved over, Andy moved over, and Trinity moved over. I did see Jamal, but he disappeared from the attendee side, so I'll keep an eye out. I do have the PowerPoint presentation pulled up, so Jim, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I will. First of all, thank you very much for allowing us to come in. We're going to spend, obviously, the pool, and I want to thank Zamaria for giving us a shout out about 5th grade swimming this summer. It was a great experience for us to have kids back in the water after having the pool pretty vacant for a long time. But you know, our goal today is, got an email from Ken to present all facets of the pool program, but then to specifically focus on David Douglas Aquatics Club. So we have some, myself, Bobby, who's a coach and a district employee, and then we have 2 athletes who are going to talk about their experience and how it helped them navigate high school. And then we also do have Jamal, hopefully he'll join us, who is a parent who has kids on the team, and kind of talk about the experience that his daughters have being part of the team. So we're going to try to get through this quickly. So if you want to, well, I'm not going to read through the presentation. I'll just kind of highlight things. So again, our David Douglas Aquatics program, I want to thank the district for building us the beautiful pool. And our goal in the aquatics programs is that we provide water safety, swim lessons, community recreation, and family recreation, as well as competitive aquatic sports to our community. Obviously, in the time of COVID, we've haven't been able to offer everything. This summer, we offered private swim lessons and offered adult lap swim. As we hopefully get to more normalcy, we'd love to get back to the community lesson programs, the recreation swims, the family recreation swims as we move forward. So next slide, Derek, thank you. So when we look at our aquatics as a whole, it kind of has three facets. We have our swimming is physical education, which we have 4th, 5th grade swimming. We have high school electives, freshman PE. We have our high school sports. Then we have our community side of the program, which is our youth sports program, our swim lessons, fitness, things that are all on its side. And we do offer even work experience. We hire a lot of our kids to work as lifeguards and lesson instructors. So it's kind of an opportunity to learn their first on-the-job training as they are involved in our district swimming program. All right, next slide. But as we said, we're going to talk mostly about David Douglas Aquatics Club today. So I'm going to turn it over to Bobby, who's going to talk about the club itself.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Unmute. Okay. Hi, my name is Bobby DeRost. I'm a coach here at David Douglas Aquatics Club. I'm also somebody that is a product of the David Douglas swimming. I swam here since I was 8 years old. Grew up through the program, graduated from David Douglas. My dad was my coach. He also went to the program at David Douglas. It's been a mainstay of our community for 50 plus years. We've had multiple Olympic trialists, even an Olympic champion come through David Douglas. And obviously, if you guys have been to the swimming pool, you see, the big mural for Kim Payton and how proud we are of her. And I think that really has been an inspiration for a lot of kids that come through the district to really try to strive to be the best, not just be their best, but try to be the best. And before COVID, we had about 180 or 160 kids on the club. We're only about half that right now, but we're growing that back up. And the vast majority of the Aquatics Club is David Douglas students, various ages from 1st grade till even we get kids when they come back from college, that graduate on, they come back and swim for us in the summertime. So a lot of kids going through there. And I'm a huge proponent of the sport of swimming. I think it really teaches dedication, commitment, and that very much carries over into the classroom. You'll see most schools and everything that the swim team has the highest GPA because the sport of swimming really pushes kids to do well outside of the water also. The Aquatics Club is a nonprofit ran by a parent board. There's obviously a picture of before the COVID that we want to get back to those numbers. But we have a lot of talented kids in the water right now. We have a couple state champions from this summer that they went over to Pendleton and became state champions. So that was really cool. And we hope that that's just going to continue to grow. There's our mission statement. A big thing about that is we want to make sure we're creating an affordable opportunity for the people of our district. We feel like we very much are big that we serve our district, and we want to make sure it's an affordable opportunity for everybody. Yeah.
All right. Can go to the next slide, Derek. Thanks. So just quick organizational structure, like Bobby said, we're a nonprofit parent board. And then the next slide. The demographics of our members, before COVID, almost all of our kids came from our 4th, 5th grade lessons or community lessons. We are in Oregon swimming. We are the team that has the most kids who are on USA Swimming Outreach, which means they qualify for the SNAP benefits. And then our club is diverse in that we at least as far as their registration paperwork, that 56% of our DDAC members identify themselves as non-white. All right, next and final slide. So kind of our goals, one is that we want to make sure that we are keeping this program attainable and accessible to every person in our community. And so finding ways to make things affordable. Second goal is to continue to recruit and retain athletes from David Douglas. As Bobby said, before COVID, we were 150 swimmers with 85% from the David Douglas School District. Once we reopened in June 1st, we were down to actually a little below 80 swimmers, and our percentage of David Douglas kids has dropped. And so we need to really push for that. Then finally, we want to recruit and parent leaders that represent the diversity of our team and community, and continue to have parents from all, have voices from all our parents and from to represent our area. And so that is our slideshow. I don't know if Jamal is on real quick to if he's here. If not, we can
Hey,
go.
Jim.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Jamal, thank you.
Well, first, thank you to Jim and Bobby for giving me the opportunity to speak to the board here today. Again, my name is Jamal Abdullah. I'm the parents of Jalan and Araya. They're two swimmers for the David Douglas Aquatic Club. My daughter started off in the community swim lessons. It has really been a big part of their life and a big part of our family. We were infused into a community of great friendship, welcome arms with the Aquatic Club. With Jalan and Araya, just speaking to how the swim club has affected them, it's given them a great sense of confidence in what they do in other parts of their life. They have achieved so much and gone so far and grew so much in life, and the swim club have been a major part of that as well. From when they were young, they first did not like getting in the water at all, and now I have a daughter who has won state championships with swimming as well, and we're just in Pendleton competing this past state meet as well. But as a parent, my wife and I, we enjoy meeting and being around other parents with the swim club. We get to meet other parents who are a part of other swim clubs as well. So it's really brought us into a sense of belonging with the community. The partnership that we have with the directors and the coaches have been great. We've come to think of ourselves as being a real big family. So when swimming was closed down for better part of a year and a half, it really took a big part of our life, of our sense of purpose, of our identity away. And now that it's started back up, we have that purpose. We have that family. There is a whole bunch of great, I would say, reunions that we was able to make when a swim club started back up. But as a parent, as a father, I'm proud that I can have my daughters participate in a very competitive athletic scene with swimming. I'm glad that we can definitely represent a better part of our community in regards to the multicultural diversity that the swim club has as a whole. So there's a lot of things that the swim club is doing, and I'm definitely proud to be a part of it as well. Thank you.
Right, Trinity, why don't you go next, then Andy.
Okay, hello, I'm Trinity Cottle, and I've been on the David Aquatics Club for 3 years. I joined swimming first. I started swimming beginning in 4th and 5th grade at the elementary school swim lessons through the school. And Coach Jim tried to recruit me, but I never really wanted to join. And then I went to family swim every Friday with my family. And then finally, I did 6th grade year. I did a mini summer swim team tryout. I liked it, wasn't ready to commit. And then freshman year, I ended up joining the club team and fell in love with the sport of swimming. I just graduated this year, and I was reflecting over my years in high school. I think that swimming has really put me on a path for success and building up. Through swimming, I think I've gained a lot of good quality traits: commitment, determination, grit, compassion. through swimming, I've created so many amazing friendships with my coaches, my teammates, and everybody else throughout the whole swimming world. Douglas has been such an amazing experience and opportunity in the club. And I like how at Douglas, there's no discrimination. Anyone's welcome on the team, no matter your race, your ethnicity, money, financial status, nothing. And I love how accepting at Douglas is and makes it so including for everybody on the team. And swim meets are so fun. Like we were just at Pendleton, like everyone's saying, everyone's swimming amazing. And I just believe that being a part of Douglas has really helped me throughout school. This year, I'll be attending Western Colorado University to swim and a part of the honor scholarship. And I think a major component to where I am today is by joining the club team, where like I put myself on a schedule and I've had so much determination and so much help with my coaches and my teammates to put myself where I am today, especially with home life. I've always felt accepted at the pool, and it's always been my safe space. And I'm so thankful to be a part of this team. And I think anybody would be lucky to be a part of the Dave Douglas Aquatics Club, as it just, I think, helps you as a better athlete and as a better person overall. And thank you.
Thank you. Andy?
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say before I start, thank you to the school board and the administration and our coaches for letting me speak and having this opportunity to speak. My name is Andy, and I'm going to be a junior at the high school this year. I'm also a competitive swimmer on our high school club, on our high school team and our club team. And at school, I'm an active participant in our student government and music programs. So I remember my first day of swim lessons very vividly. Running late, I sprinted as fast as my 3'9" body could carry myself, and in a white shirt and gray shorts, I jumped into the water. And 3'9" was barely able to reach the bottom of the shallow end, but my excitement grew beyond any measurable heights. And the summer of my transition into middle school, the new pool building opened, and with that came the establishment of our club team. And it was at this moment that without the encouragement of our coaches and our community, my years of lessons would go to waste. However, I can proudly say that by committing to our team, it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. And that's saying a lot because I tend to be indecisive. And through this team, I've grown socially by meeting people with similar interests. And through this team, I've succeeded academically because it has given me a place to escape reality and de-stress. And through this team, I've found joy in teamwork, individual progress, and challenges. And through this team, I've learned to channel emotions, thoughts, and feedback into motivation, which is a key to success in the future. And on the topic of the future, I've decided to continue my swimming at the collegiate level because of the positive impact these last 11 years have had on my life. And although I'm no longer diving into the pool with gray shorts, my passion for this sport, for this team, and for the opportunity this team opens for our community remains untouchable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Did you have a conclusion?
That's really well. The athletes concluded it for us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you clearly have a career in swimming, public speaking, and writing, all of you ahead of you. I would love to give the board an opportunity to either respond or ask any questions you'd like. Aaron?
You mentioned that you're going to be asking for some help in the future, making the pool more accessible to people who are kind of feeling a financial squeeze. I mean, what would you need from us to help make that happen, or what could we do to help with that in the future?
I think that's a great question. I think that's something we need to work on as a team. I know we've done in the past, we've done some things where, kids who get free lunch, their lesson costs are lower, and kids who pay, reduced lunch, it's a little bit, it's tiered up. We haven't done that the last 3 years, but, a lot of it is making sure that we run, we want to balance accessibility and making sure that the pool is not draining the budget also, and it's that working as a team. I think working with the pool and the Aquatics Club and the school district, finding ways to make sure that we are reaching our kids who need it the most. I know I have data on elementary schools that have the lowest swimming background. I don't know how to say it, but those kids, we need to get into the lesson program at more so that they have the opportunities to get their safety and their swimming confidence up. And then from those kids, then some of them will develop on the swim team. But I think just really opening up as many kids we can get in for those swim lessons the best we can. And then just, helping create a cost for the club team that is attainable, that we can make sure our kids in our area are able to continue to participate at the level they want to participate in. And not to drown on this, but there's one thing to get the kids on the team, but it's then to get them engaged in the team and to be able to go to the competitions. And all of those are financial strains to parents, as well as commitment strains, getting kids whose parents, I'm going to talk about Trinity. Her parents were very supportive, but weren't able to get her to a lot of things. And so it took a community to get her to swim meets and to help her get through those things. And so just create as much accessibility to all of our kids as possible in all facets of our program.
Thank you. Frida?
Yes, Jim, it's good to see you again. As he knows, I'm a big supporter of the swim lessons. Both my kids as well as my granddaughter has gone through them, and I'm always bragging up the system they use. One of the things we kept hearing about, and you alluded to the fact that you only had private lessons. I'm assuming because you hire so many of our students, the fact that we were closed for over a year, we weren't able to train the students so that we could do more. Was that the case?
It was twofold. One was, just coming off of COVID, we were still concerned about that. Obviously swimming, you can't wear a mask. They're in the water. So we wanted to, that was one concern. The second thing is because of kids were not able to get lifeguarding in the last 16 months, it was more challenging to find kids that were capable of lifeguarding or had the credentials to lifeguard. But then the third was that we're working with the district to make sure we get the number of staff members up there. And I know in the fall we are able to hire more staff members. So it was partly a staffing issue. It was partly just trying to be more safe with, and obviously with everything going on now, we got to relook at that again. But making sure that we were keeping kids safe, and also making sure we had enough time, we get kids and staff members trained to handle teaching the lessons and managing 6 to 8 kids at one time as well.
Well, hopefully next summer we can get back to them, because I've heard so many people compliment Douglas's lessons over the community center and other places. So,
well, we want to see that pool packed again. It was a little bit of a depressing summer, to be quite honest. Just not seeing that energy of the little kids taking lessons and seeing the younger Andy Tans jump in the water with their gray shorts on. We missed that.
All right, any other questions or comments from the board? Donna. Gotta unmute. There you go.
I wanted to know, as always, how do most families find out about the swim club? How is that information shared?
Most of it's gone through the elementary schools, and then through the 4th and 5th grade swim programs. We send out little information once they complete those lessons. They get a little report card that has club information with contact information that goes home with them.
So that is sent just through the kids, or is there anything sent directly to parents?
Right now, it is just through the kids. In the past, we have things gone through the schools. We haven't done that in the last couple years.
Is there a reason why there was the change?
I don't know, but I think that's something, obviously, we need to get that back going, not only in English, but in different languages, so that we can get that information to the kids. And the swim lesson part. I know the swim lessons we do send out every May, we send out a lesson registration form out to every child through their schools. It goes in their Wednesday packets, but getting that would be one way the board could help us, or the school district could help us, is to provide us the ability to get that information out to every parent directly instead of through the kids.
Okay. And my only other question is, I'm just curious, since the introduction is primarily through elementary school, how much transition time coming out of the pool do kids have in returning to class?
With our 4th and 5th grade swim lessons?
Yeah, specifically, but then in general for all kids.
For high school, they get up to 20 minutes before the bell rings, and then it gives them 10 extra minutes to get to their next class. Kids who don't need that time stay in the water. But for kids who need more time in the locker room, it's 20 minutes is the transition time. For the grade school kids, it is about 15 minutes if they do have the opportunity to get out a little bit earlier than that, if they want to.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Anyone else?
Stephanie, if you don't mind, can I just say just real briefly, I know we're following agenda here, but Jim, Bobby, and Jamal as adults, as 2 coaches, 1 father, parent, I want to thank you. Thank you all for being here and participating and engaging, and really to recognize, I know the board knows this, but I have to say it, or I feel I want to say it as a opportunity privilege, is that we truly have a premier swim program, and it's because of the coaches and because of the families and because of the tradition. And so I just want to say thank you for continuing that. And obviously with COVID, we're down, there's a dip, right? We know that. And as we rebuild, I'm really excited to see that move forward. And then I want to specifically thank Andy and Trinity for being here and lending your voices. And board chair Stevens already talked about how well-spoken you both were. So thank you so much, and good luck in your continued swimming, and look forward to hopefully seeing you at a meet this year. So great job, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for letting us present.
Thanks for sharing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I saw your daughter. I assume that's your daughter, Jamal.
Well, I have 4 daughters. I have my 2 oldest. They're a part of the swim club. And then I have 2 younger daughters who eventually they will be a part of that swim club as soon as the lessons start back up and we can get them back in the pool.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we move on to consent agenda, we have one more attendee, Finn, who would like to testify around summer school. So I wanted to invite Finn over. So we're gonna have that little awkward transition time where, I feel like we need the Oscars music. And Derek, I'll just give it over to you when Finn is on, and you can let us know.
I believe that Finn is on now. Might be under the name of Bruce.
Bruce? Yeah, I figured that might be you. Welcome, Finn and Bruce, I assume.
Hi there. Yes. All right.
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
I wanted to help Finn. It's his first Zoom experience, so thought we'd kind of do this together. So, do you want to talk about summer school and about maybe some of your favorite things about doing it? You can look at the camera. What did you like the most?
I liked
So he's in
doing the water park project.
He's in 5th grade, and you like doing the water park project?
Yeah.
That was your favorite part?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the water park project?
It's this project that we did. We got to work on our own water park.
Wow, like designing one?
Yeah, designing one, and we got to make our own water slide out of tin foil and pipe cleaners.
Holy cow. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
And there was another special treat that you got for fifth graders, right? That you really liked. Do you remember what that was? Where you got to go somewhere and do something?
Oh yeah, we got to go swim. I liked that too.
That's awesome. Did
Yeah.
you hear the folks talking about the swim club right before this? Hopefully
Yeah.
they'll think about joining.
Mhm.
Sounds like they can use some good recruits.
Definitely. Yeah. So is there anything else you want to say about summer school? Well,
There's
I
no wrong answer. You don't have to answer, but we really, really enjoy hearing from our students. So thank you so much for being here.
say thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Awesome. Great. So, well, that was so great. It's so great to see students. Can we move then to consent agenda? Any of my board members want to move approval?
I had a quick question about one of the things we're approving, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Under personal recommendations, it looks like we've created a new position this year, or y'all have created a new position for the Assistant Director of Student Services. I was just kind of curious why you created that position and what it's all about.
You bet, Aaron. I believe I sent an email earlier, but happy to answer the question now. Not earlier today, a while back. But Mary, do you want to explain ultimately how the two positions and what we did?
Yeah, it's actually kind of a restructure of the Student Services Department, so it's not necessarily a new position. We had been kind of looking at the duties of we had two program administrators in our department. Florence Protopappas was one and Jared Hayes was the other. And just looking at their duties and really evaluating if they needed to be reclassified was really what we were looking at. And then we had an opportunity because Jared Hayes actually left the district and got a great job someplace else. We're happy for Jared. But it just gave us an opportunity when we're reposting, is this really a program administrator position or should it be a higher level position like an assistant director? And so that's why you have it. So it's replacing one program administrator. It's just sort of reclassifying that position.
So similar duties, just with a nice, a better title, basically, or a more adequate title, I could say.
Yeah, and if you just think about the scope of student services and how involved we are in a lot of different things, but also countywide, it seemed like an appropriate reclassification.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the answer. Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Aaron.
Any other questions? If not, can I get one of my board members to move approval?
I'll move approval of consent agenda items.
Thank you, Frida. Second?
I'll second.
I believe that was Valderrama. Great. Okay. Barrow.
Aye.
Stevens. Aye. Christopher.
Aye.
Wynn.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye.
Valderrama.
Aye.
I believe that's everyone. Did I miss anybody? Great.
You're muted.
Of course I am, because it's Zoom. Okay. Moving on, the next agenda item is one that we've asked Pat to present. around district purchasing and our RFP process. This is something I know that Vice Chair Barber has expressed a lot of interest in the past, is how do we contract? What's the process? How do we know it's equitable and fair? How do people know that opportunities are out there? So we wanted to get a sense of what's being done now, and that's what Pat's going to present. So moving it over to you, Pat.
Okay, I think Derek's going to pop up the presentation. Everybody can hear me fine?
Yes.
So we're going to give a brief overview of the purchasing process tonight. And if you want to go ahead and scroll forward. So under board policy, the board directs me, the Director of Administrative Services, as the purchasing agent for the district. I have 2 faithful assistants. I have a purchasing clerk who handles informal and some of the intermediate procurements, which I'll give you more of an idea of what those are a little later in the presentation. But day-to-day purchases and some cooperative supply purchases is that person's focus. And then myself and my assistant handle formal procurements. So we follow the Attorney General model rules. And so here is an excerpt from that. And that is under our board policy. If you want to go ahead and scroll forward, Derek. So informal procurement is under $10,000, and we can award that contract in any manner deemed practical or convenient. We can do a direct purchase without competition. So that means we don't need to actually go out and try to solicit the lowest price. We do often try to look around, but if we have a need and it's less than $10,000, we are not required to look for competition. Can you move forward? And intermediate procurement is a competitive solicitation for products or services. The value is between that $10,000 mark and $150,000. It's just under $150,000. We need to seek at least 3 informally solicited competitive price quotes or proposals from prospective contractors. These are evaluated basis of price. So we're looking at a price quote here. And do you want to move forward, Derek? So here's where we're looking at what's the best price and quality. So when we look at getting quotes, we need to make sure that we are actually asking vendors for the same thing. If we want green apples, I can't go out and ask one vendor for red and one vendor for green and then say I compared fairly. So we need to make sure that they get the same information to prepare their quote. We often use cooperative agreements, and that is something that helps us streamline the process. But we also have the option to go to a formal procurement option. We can also always go to a more formal process, and our attorney will say you can always do more process than less. That often helps you with vendors and understanding why they were selected. So formal procurement options are requests for proposals and invitations to bid. If you want to go ahead and scroll forward. So I thought I would go off a little bit onto what is a cooperative agreement. So it's a type of procurement where an agency or organization competitively bids out services or goods, and the procurement contains specifically required language giving proposers notice that other entities may purchase from the procurement. And so districts and local governments often use those because larger entities such as the state of Oregon, counties, Portland Public Schools have a lot more buying power than a smaller district. And so when they go out to bid and they put that information in there, that is seen as a plus for companies. And that's also seen as something for companies to be alerted to, because that means that anybody could buy off of that contract as long as they meet the requirements. There's more competition involved, and it's more efficient for the district. It saves us time and money from going out and having to solicit ourselves. Sometimes we do our own, Go back a little bit. So sometimes we do our own cooperatives. So we have done a few cooperative agreements with Centennial. So a cooperative agreement can be a joint agreement with just certain members, or it can be an open cooperative, which will be open to all governmental agencies that by law can purchase under it. So like we also did our cooperative procurement for substitute services, and we help out a lot of our regional neighbors here. Centennial is one of them that uses this contract, as well as Tiger Tualatin to buy their subservices. Next slide. A formal procurement, I'm going to go mainly into the request for proposals because that's where our questions were. It's a method of procurement for acquiring products or services, and generally you do this at the $150,000 mark. So you submit, it's a very formal process. There's an advertisement requirement. Frequently, those advertisements for us go out into the Daily Journal of Commerce. They are advertised, and we usually do a 21 to 30 day submittal time. There are certain statutory requirements on allowing for questions, allowing for a protest, and the actual request for proposal document is quite lengthy. It contains a lot of the legal requirements that the proposer needs to know. It also defines to the proposer what goods or services are being requested. And then it also gives a very prescribed method for how they turn in their proposal, and also lets them know how we will score their proposal. We award to the responsible proposer that offers the best value to the agency. For an RFP, this is not necessarily price-based. As a matter of fact, when we look for architects in statute, we cannot look at price until we've gotten down to a certain number of vendors. And that only recently changed in the last few years. When we were doing the bond, we could not ask for price until we had actually selected the vendor. Can you move forward, Derek? So I'll give you this presentation, but this gives you a basic summary of what the differences are between an intermediate procurement and an RFP. So you can see in intermediate, you're really looking at the lowest price, whereas at an RFP, you're looking at the best value. In an RFP, you can look at qualitative factors. So you're looking at the responsiveness. You can look at the project team. So like when we're buying architectural or engineering services, we really want to know that they have a competent team that's going to be able to do the project. And we often split our scoring for our RFPs. And so you'll see costs are scored as part of the total score. And what we'll do is we'll have a committee that will score the proposal on the technical side. So what's their project team? What is their proposal about? Who are their references? Do they have good references? We often ask for financials, which we don't score, but look to see that the company is solvent and that they'll be able to provide service, and we'll know that they'll be there during the entire time of the project. Let's see here. And we award an RFP based on the highest solicitation score. Derek, do you want to move forward? So as I mentioned, we often go out for RFP at the $50,000 threshold. We tend to do that because that's also the threshold where you start getting into public improvements. So things like security cameras, when we install those are considered a public improvement. BOLI laws are applicable at that point in time, and there is specific language we need to make any proposer aware of so that they know they must have certified payrolls, they must pay BOLI wages, etc. So oftentimes we look at the $50,000 threshold for an RFP. Next slide. So minority business enterprise and women business enterprises. So Business Oregon provides for an MWBE certification. That certification is for minority owned and women owned businesses. And it's for them to be able to seek state, county, and city and special jurisdiction, such as us, contracts. These certifications don't expire, and it's based on the individual. Next slide. The business must be for profit, and there's several criteria here. You'll see that there must be some ownership and control of the business, as well as a contribution of capital. Can we go forward a slide? So we focus our MWBE outreach. Since most of our district purchasing falls under informal methods, the concentration for our outreach has been when we've had bonds and large capital projects. Our construction-related procurements have outreach sessions for MWBE firms to attend. And usually our construction management firm will provide for those opportunities. Next slide. So to give you an example of one of our current RFPs was the bond consultant. So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit on the agenda. So we issued that RFP. We did the advertisement, as I mentioned, in the Daily Journal of Commerce. Document plan centers maintain databases of RFPs. So they also help to get that information out. So when we post in the Daily Journal of Commerce, there's several document plan centers that will reach out to us, ask for the postings, and they will push them out to their membership. There we go. So to give you an idea, we received one proposal. We've issued that intent to award letter to Wright Public Consulting for the bond consultant. Going forward. This is just kind of give you an idea of how many RFPs we've done in the past couple of years. And so you can see the RFP is actually the date, and then the last number is that the only one. It goes in consecutive order. So if we were to have 2 RFPs go out on May 21st, you would see a .1, .2 after the date. So we try to make it as simple as possible for ourselves. And you can see we have 2-way radios. It gives you an idea of the number of bids we receive. We do tend to have low bid outcome just because we're a smaller entity. So that's another reason why we look at those cooperative agreements, because oftentimes companies are looking for a larger purchase. And when many people can purchase off of that contract, then they get more business. So, but you'll see all the different items there, and you can see that for MWBE bidders, Derek, can you go to the next slide? We really see those when we start getting into the construction, the architectural, you can see small works, bond planning, bond projects. And so these are all the RFPs that I believe we issued since June 26th of 2019. So we don't do a whole lot through those processes. And I believe that is the end of the presentation. So.
Thank you, Pat. I would love to open it up now to any board questions or thoughts, or comments.
I have just maybe comment question with the MW, all those initials, I always hate them. It seems like you said, it only was during the construction period we tend to get them. And I know this was the same, city has similar issues, even though they have where they can register with the city. There, it seems like there should be companies that can provide the other services, but how we reach them maybe have to be different. I'm just wondering if there's some way we can look into how better to outreach to these groups. Because we are a smaller district and our projects tend to be smaller and often they're smaller businesses, and our projects might be ones they can easily handle. Just a comment.
Thank you, Frida. Donna, I think I saw you maybe wanting to unmute.
Yes, thank you. I had a question as to, so what I understood is that there is the informal threshold, which is less than $10,000. The RFP formal threshold that is above 150, and then that intermediate is anywhere in between there. Do you have, can you give us an idea of what percentage of the contracts fall into each area?
I would say off of the top of my head, a lot of our purchasing tends to fall in the informal, less than $10,000. It's a little difficult because a lot of our office purchases, when you look at the individual purchases, they're not necessarily that large. But when you look at all the schools over the district, so you notice that in the contract list, there might be 300,000 for Office Depot. That's over the entire year. But the schools will purchase, $500 or $1,000 is probably a large purchase for them at a time. So that's where it's a little bit difficult to say that particular number. But I would say probably in the smaller. We do a lot through our office products. Actually, Amazon has a cooperative, believe it or not. And so a lot goes through Amazon.
Okay. So, and then it sounds like the government requirements in terms of process don't kick in until you get to that upper level, but most of our purchasing is done at the lower informal level. So then are there any, even if they're in-house guidelines that kind of govern how we're making those decisions, since most of our purchasing is being done outside of government requirements? Then what are the requirements or at least policies that we have in place for that?
So our procurement policies are under policy DJ and DJC, I believe. And so what we look at when we're looking at small purchases, we're really looking at what the product is. And those purchases, we allow folks to make small purchases and get reimbursed as long as they have pre-approval. That's part of the board policy. So if a teacher wants to go out and get some supplies for a project, if they can fill out a request form to their principal and go out and make that small purchase. That's intended to be a reimbursement for an immediate purchase. And so what we define as an immediate purchase is something where you get the product when you make the payment. So buying online is not an immediate purchase, even though things are changing quite drastically on how quickly things come. We don't consider that an immediate purchase. So that would need to go through our central office. We have some standards on things we buy and things we try to encourage staff not to buy. We try to discourage things like IKEA furniture because oftentimes it doesn't last. Sometimes that can be difficult for folks because they have set budgets or they have an idea what they want. But in the long-term interest of the district, purchasing something that is perhaps more meant for the home and light use versus something that is going to be purchased and used for 10 or 20 years, like some of our student chairs. That's something we try to encourage and direct into different ways. We try not to, what do I want to say? We try not to stifle people, but we also try to make sure that there's some roadblocks or not roadblocks, but road bumps, so that they realize, little speed bumps, that, well, maybe that's not the best choice, or maybe we can do something a little bit differently. So we do, purchases generally come through my purchasing clerk. If she knows of items that are on sale, so maybe vendors are having sales, or she knows of a particular vendor, she will get quotes, even though it might be less than that $10,000 amount. And then she will review it. It comes through the requisition process, and it also will come to me. So I approve the purchase orders in the district. And so I get a review, and sometimes I ask the question, what in the world is a blah, blah? And or why are we buying that? And occasionally I have to say no, but we usually try to figure out what the purpose is and how best we can support the schools. Did that answer your question? That was kind of long-winded, sorry.
Well, that kind of sounds like for more like individual teacher purchases. I guess I was thinking more of when the district is making purchases that aren't at the level necessarily of the formal 150,000, but maybe $10,000, $20,000, or $8,000, and it's a district purchase. I'm just wondering, are there any things, like what are the things that are considered when deciding where we're making those purchases and who we're considering in that decision? And I'm sorry if I'm not communicating that clearly, but I'm not talking about an individual teacher going out to buy supplies for her individual classroom. I meant like, as you know, as a district.
So I need a little clarification, because when you say a district purchase,
right?
So like we have different departments. So we have curriculum, we have the maintenance department. The maintenance department will actually go out and get quotes for things that they need. So if they need to replace a unit, HVAC unit or something at a school, or I think Jody, for example, she'll go get quotes she needed to replace an oven. And so that's probably going to be somewhere, I think, around $15,000. So that's something that she's going to go out and she's going to get quotes. She's going to document the quotes. So oftentimes, so in our maintenance department, what we'll do is we'll contact vendors. We'll send out an email to vendors that we know. We'll say, this is what we're looking for. We'll give them a deadline to respond. They'll be able to email back questions. They submit their bid price through email. We'll take that and we'll do a comparison. So we need to have 3 quotes, or at least attempt to get 3 quotes. So if I contact 3 vendors and I say, I need these items by this date, can you give me a price, or can you give me a timeline on when they're available? And I get 2 vendors to respond and 1 vendor doesn't respond, then I just document that. And so that needs to be documented and in the file. And when our auditors come and visit us twice a year, they'll actually pull different checks based on dollar value, and they'll ask us for the supporting documentation for each of those.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Aaron?
I was just curious about one thing, and then a second question, kind of related to what the questions Donna was asking. So that 10,000 mark, the 150,000 mark, are those set by our budget? Like, is there a different percentage for smaller districts and different percentage for bigger districts with bigger budgets, or are they all kind of fixed across the state?
So each district can make their own purchasing requirements. These are following the Attorney General model rules. This also ties into the federal requirements, procurement requirements. So we try to stick with these as much as we can. And they recently, well, I shouldn't say recently, it's probably been 5 years now, increased that 10,000. It used to be 5. So there was a lot more requirement on the district at a lower level to get bids. Just because of, I think, price increases and inflation over time and the amount of time it takes to get bids, follow up with vendors who are asking questions, and the time involved in that, those thresholds were increased. The federal government had $3,500 at one point. So we're really looking at where is that spend potential, and where do we really need to focus on, making sure we're getting good pricing. Not saying that we don't do that at under $10,000, because oftentimes we will go out, and if we know there's multiple vendors on something, we'll ask the question to the vendors and say, what do you have and what's the pricing on this?
All right, thank you. Second question is, so if you have a kind of a fixed list of vendors that you send, if you have a request out for bids and procurement, how does a new vendor get on that list? Like, how do they get into the list so that next time something comes up, they're part of that discussion?
Well, right now, vendors usually email us. And so we're looking at two different, I don't know if I want to call them upgrades, but there is, we've been trying to figure out how to get a fillable form on the website for folks to fill out. But the state of Oregon recently upgraded their system, and they went from a system that was called ORPN to a system called Oregon Buys, and that just rolled out a couple months ago. And so we have some training, I want to say next week or the week after, on that particular product, because we could also potentially use that to post bids and use that vendor base also. And so that is rolling out statewide. So we're looking also into that to see if that might be a better option for us, being that there's already a platform that's built.
So you wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak.
Correct.
All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah.
Rita.
Just a quick one, because you brought up ORPN and so we have not used ORPN before?
We use ORPN to usually pull contracts off of state contracts and purchasing agreements. We haven't used ORPN that much for posting bids. It was a little bit clunky, and we didn't see a lot of success in that. So we've done mostly requests so that we know also who gets all of the updates. That's one of the, I would say, concerns that I have is when we have those posting centers that will take our bid and they will post it out. Sometimes they don't get the addenda that update the RFP, and then folks miss that. So we try to make sure that they're connecting with our office so that they know if there's additional addenda or questions that have been answered, so that they get that information if it needs to be incorporated into a proposal.
Hey, Pat, I know that you probably are very aware, but the procurement system for Oregon is shifting from ORPN to Oregon Buys. Correct. So there's there's lots of new fun things to learn about that system. And we'll look forward to hearing whether or not you're able to use it, because it should have more functionality than the old system. Donna, I'm gonna turn it to you, and then we have 4 minutes left in this agenda item.
Yeah, my other question was in reference to the, you said that when there is an RFP, it's advertised in the Daily Journal of Commerce. And for all of the things that are done that are advertised there or in whatever systems that have been set, are we by mandate limited to using just those systems? Even if we do advertise there, are we also allowed to share, like through in our district, to say that the district is looking for bids on, this just with our families and community members? Is that permissible, or are we limited to the channels that we are currently using?
We aren't limited. We do have to meet the advertising requirements, and then we can always go beyond. It's just, we have some limited staffing, and Frida can attest, it's been a little bit of a change in the 10 years that that I've been in the business office. And so like right now we're short 3 staff, and it's been a little difficult. We aren't getting applications, and some of the areas that are specialized, such as purchasing, are difficult to find folks that understand the nuances of government purchasing. We, being that it's usually my assistant, and up until I got my last assistant retired, it was pretty much me. So we just try to get things out the best we can. That's probably not the best the best solution, but we do tend to try to get things out and get as much advertised, but we do also have limited time and limited budgets. So
Great.
Thanks.
All right, we're 1 minute from time on this one. So thank you, Pat. I think that you probably hear underneath the surface, the board has a real interest in understanding, because we know that these contracts come through our packets every month, and we really wanted to get a sense of how decisions are made and what goes into it. And clearly there's a lot of work that your office does to do that. And I think also buried in that a little bit is probably the desire to see more local folks in our community getting contracts, and particularly with an eye to equity. So that's kind of, I think, where some of this came from, knowing that, of course, we also want to do right by the taxpayers, and that we want to make sure that we are putting our money mostly into our education, right? So that's where some of this came from. Thank you so much for all the work you do. And moving on to the next item, we have a board vacancy. Everybody knows our lovely board member Sahar moved out of district and resigned. So we wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the process for that. Essentially what we're looking at for filling an unexpired term on the board is a 3-month process. The way that it works is following this receipt of the resignation, the vacancy is to be posted in all school newsletters as appropriate, on website in the Oregonian, and the position has to be posted for 30 days. Applicants submit their letter of interest to the superintendent's office, including the resume, any school involvement, district activities, confirming their intention to run for election, because we want to make sure that folks aren't just appointed, that they really do want to run for election and serve after that. And then we invite folks to make a 5-minute presentation during our regular board meeting. And then at the following meeting, we have during open session, we nominate applicants and we vote. And sometimes it takes several votes to get to an answer. And so we wanted to just put a little bit of time on the agenda here for folks to discuss that process. Maybe Ken, you can talk about anything that has been done. I assume that it hasn't been posted yet, but I don't know. I haven't seen it. Okay. Yeah. So maybe give us a sense of what that timeline would look like. Donna, your hand is still up, so I'm not sure if you still, no. Okay. So Ken, is there anything that you'd like to add about that? Or?
Yeah, so I can very quickly, but Derek, if you want to pull up, I just have a visual that what we can show as well that walks through really, Stephanie, I think you just summarized it. So, but Derek, you should have 2 documents that we looked at earlier today.
Yeah, let me pull those up.
Great. And ultimately, all this does is show an example of last time, and then we can look at something in front of us with some of our key dates we have in front of us. So this happened, this was the process we followed last time this occurred. So this is not now, this is last time. And it just shows the overall dates, what we did, what we followed, and really Stephanie just outlined all this. And then there's a communication that went out to the families, kind of posting, right? That posting piece, which we're waiting for direction from the board on when we post and kind of go through the process. But that's what this document outlines. And you can see down below that timeline. And then if we looked at the second document, yep, scroll down. So here's a possible timeline and again, process, and it basically shows our current board meeting dates we have kind of right now slotted. The board could always do another meeting date or put something else on board, but what's currently published as meeting dates are right there. And then there's a sample process timeline, you know, shows the posting. For example, we could post tomorrow with that draft letter and kind of say we're looking for it, what it looks like, what the process is. And then the September 9th could be more of a candidate presentations where they invite them. The workshop, you could change into actually that selection, or you could leave it as conversation with board members. We've done it before too, where we've had a presentation, but we've also had a conversation where prospective board members ask current board members, the board of directors, what's it like? What input? What do we need to know? And then we would be looking at the October board meeting. So this is just what I did, was kind of just threw together a template, possibilities. With all that said, we don't have to follow any of this. Whatever the board's will is, we can look at current dates and make it happen. But I just thought I'd give a visual as well for those who are streaming.
Thank you to our illustrious superintendent, opening it up to the board.
Just to comment, and I mentioned it, Ken, in an email too, is because of the problem I had with the budget committee member and one turning out that actually was my first choice, wasn't a citizen. Besides the registered voter, I think you need to put citizen as two, just to make it real clear, because that's what's required in law. So just to save us having to ask the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think most immigrants know that they don't vote unless they're citizens, but for sure, it's good to
but I had an applicant and we had registered voter, and it turned out he wasn't a citizen. Yeah. So he really wasn't a registered voter either. So I just want to save us time.
All right, anybody else? Do you want to follow this process? Any alterations? I'd love to also hear from Donna and Aaron, because I know you came to, I think you both might have come to we held a workshop, and there were a lot of board members interested in the position, I think position 1 at the time, potential folks, and we did, I mean, I would love for us to consider making it very broad, inviting folks in, and then finding other ways and other places where community members who really want to engage, even if they aren't selected for the board, can plug in. And I'm thinking like the bond is a great opportunity, or, you know, serving in the equity committee, if that's something of interest and appropriate for that person, because there are other ways that we can engage folks who aren't necessarily on the board. I'd love to hear from Donna and Aaron, since you went through this process.
I thought that that meeting was really exciting, where Donna was picked for the board chair. It was really wonderful to see her kind of speak to her credentials, and to know that somebody amazing was picked for the board. I found out about it just because I was a regular at the meetings, but I don't know. I couldn't say as to how other people found out about the vacancy and were willing to apply to it. I was there every week, so I heard about it that way. I'm not really sure how the information got disseminated that time around otherwise.
Go ahead, Donna.
I was going to say that the overall process for me was, I thought it was a good process. I think it is important to think about, yes, how do people find out about it? In my case, there were, because of the work that I did at the time, there were actually teachers and parents who reached out to me and encouraged me to like, oh, this position is open. We think you would be good for this. Would you consider, pursuing this? So because of that coming directly through like teachers and parents who were in the district, that was a real encouragement to me to apply. So I think that that's really important to involve our faculty and staff and parents, and encouraging them to think about who they know, because that is exactly how I found out about it. I was not a person who was coming to the meetings regularly, and I wasn't really familiar with the website, but I was familiar with the schools and the people in the district.
Thanks. Frida, did you have comments?
Oh, what I was going to comment, because I've been through a lot of these appointments, is that however we advertised it worked very well. We had 14 applicants, and prior to that, we had never had more than 4. So, kudos however it got out and however it was spread, but I think it really got it out more because of the amount of people who applied.
And Stephanie, I would add that it was also very helpful to me that Andrea, as a board member, made herself available to answer questions that I had as I was in the decision-making whether or not to pursue. So as board members, I think it's important for us to be available to do that for other people.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that Ken shared on that timeline was a workshop where we could, was that correct? Where we could do something like that. I mean, in person or however people want to. And I'm personally willing to make myself available to anybody in the community who wants to talk about it. Totally happy to do that myself, even outside of that particular meeting. Like folks just want, my phone number is on the website. My personal phone number is on the website under David Douglas School Board. So folks can reach out to me anytime. Any other comments or suggestions for improvement of process? I agree that we had some great candidates last time.
The schedule, Ken didn't have the workshop, and I remember us doing it last time, being available to answer questions as board members.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, do we want to do that again? Because then that will delay it a little bit. Yeah. Possibly we could do it earlier in September, and then at our normal workshop at the end of September, have them make their presentations, and then we still could actually pick by the meeting at the 1st of October.
Yeah, so what we just showed, that again, possible draft was getting something out tomorrow, or the worst case Monday, but we should be able to tomorrow. We have the template, start that advertising piece, start that recruitment piece, start that communication piece, using social media, using newsletters, using email, reaching out to administrators based on what Donna just said, leadership, parent who are engaged and not, just trying to reach out. But then the way we could do it, one of the timelines would be our business meeting in September, and this could be flip-flop, but during the business meeting, we could invite individuals to come do presentations. And then during the workshop, which we do have a date scheduled in the workshop for the third week in September, that workshop could be that conversation, right? That question and answer, get to know conversation. We could give a little more structure to it. And then that would mean we've done presentations, we've had an opportunity for question answers, conversations, and then the business meeting in October, which is scheduled now on the books, that could be a selection date. That could actually be an action item for the board to appoint. So again, right now we could follow that timeline and kick it off tomorrow.
I mean, I guess I would just say, if people were thinking about whether or not to apply, for them to submit and give presentations by next board meeting seems like it's sort of it should be reversed. Like there should be an opportunity to talk, ask questions, and then apply. But I know that does lengthen the timeline. What do folks think about that?
Well, it could be, let me talk this through and think out loud, Stephanie. Are you thinking that the September board meeting, business meeting, that's where we could do a meet and greet? It just wouldn't be in a workshop, it'd be during a business.
We're going to be in person anyway.
Right.
You know, it might
Then
get
the
folks to
workshop,
care and attend our board meetings.
the workshop could turn into the presentation, right? That would be the workshop. And then our October business meeting, there's a selection. So it's just flip-flopping those 2 dates, but we would stay on the same timeline. So if the board's okay with that, I see that working perfectly.
Is the board okay with that?
All right, when are you, okay, I guess I'm a little confused. I see the meet and greet kind of thing, because if I
Gary,
was,
can you pull up?
if I was one of those, someone thinking about it, not having made my decision yet, and I would want where I could go and ask my questions so I could make my decision. But then the application timeline would have to be after that. So you can't do both. I mean, it would be, yeah, you almost have to have that workshop before you have the application
Yeah,
deadline.
we're saying the same thing. So and I see why I see your hand up, but let's just look at this. So if we are doing September, we would take part of our September meeting, as I understand it, to sort of talk to people, correct? As part of our September business meeting.
Right, we would have an agenda item to basically question, answer, community conversation. We could call it that, even though it's a business. And that's what we do. During that time, we have a conversation about it. We answer questions, open up the floor to questions. And it's not a workshop, but it's during the meeting, however long we set that in the agenda. And then it's September 23 board workshop. That's more of a true, actually where they do their presentations. So we invite anyone who's applied to do the presentations. And then finally, October 14th is where we do the selection. So the August 13th, so tomorrow is when we post and kind of go through the process, and we can make it for, the Friday before the 23rd is when applications are due, right? We could leave the application window open for a long time, and it could be before the board workshop, before they ever have to formally apply.
What?
Yeah, so I'm new, so this is like my first time going through this process, and it's just my second board meeting, so I have just more like logistical questions. So during the vacancy, we have current 6 board members. How does the voting for these agenda items work with even to odd number board members? And also, I think Ken referred to it about community input. I know this vote ultimately comes down to board member votes on who gets to be on the board. Does community have input? Can they do testimonials about certain candidates they favor? Because I would like to hear from the community about what they're looking for in terms of what board leadership that they're interested in and who they would like to see on the board. So I take this as a big responsibility if it comes down to our votes, and would love to have an opportunity for communities. Can they testify on behalf of candidates that are applying? And I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, so in the past, so for any business meeting that we always have public to be heard. So for example, if there was a board selection on October 14th, there'd be a public to be heard section. And again, this is up to the chair ultimately, so I'm just kind of speaking what we've done in the past. But then during that session, people could definitely testify and share information, who they'd like to see. We could also communicate, during the business, or as we go down this, is if anyone would like to submit written testimony or support, that how they do that, what that format looks like. Obviously, when we do the workshop, others can come and be present at workshops too, if the board is interested in that. The selection itself, just to be clear, is the board. It is a board vote, and it's a board vote where we go through a process, and there's others on the board could probably explain this better than I can, but ultimately go through and nominate and vote, and kind of through process of elimination, each vote go through the process until there's a consensus and a majority. So that's where Stephanie talked about. Sometimes it takes a while because there's a rotation. So we scale it out on kind of a bracket, literally a bracket for each board member. And as they go through the process of selection, it narrows down until they're voting on 1 or 2, or finally 1 to approve. It's how it's been done in the past.
And just so you know, last time the vacancy was, we knew well in advance. So we did the process while there still was 7 members on the board. And so we didn't have the even. A prior time, we had 6 members and it came down to 2 people and 3 to 3, and no one was changing their mind. So we had to flip a coin. And so we flipped a coin to get the board member. So it doesn't always go real smooth, but that's usually how it is. But I recommend getting the written letters of support just to keep the time reasonable. Otherwise, you could really be extending this out when letters of support would be just as adequate.
All right, so what I'm going to suggest is that, you know, what Ken laid out that isn't exactly this is the way to go in terms of, you know, posting it tomorrow. Whatever we did last time is great, but we all know people too, right? So we're the people who've been voted by the community as their representative. We know a ton of people in this district too, so we need to get the word out. And then stick to that timeline Ken put up, and Donna and I will meet on how to take testimony, although I always err on the side of community, so I'm likely to want to hear from people. But as your chair and vice, we'll meet on that and let you know where we land. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to just move that process forward. Anyone object? All right, I didn't hear anybody unless you were on mute, but great, moving on. Oh, we're 4 minutes behind, dang it. But Ken, this is really important. This is the Rssl update. I know lots of family members, community, students, educators, staff really want to hear what's in store and what we know so far around the start of school and what it's going to look like. So I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you so much. So Derek, if you want to pull up the Rssl guidance document, and as he's pulling up, just a reminder, Rssl stands for Ready Schools, Safe Learners. And the idea of this document, it comes out of ODE, that provides guidance for us as we reopen, as we're looking at the fall, as we look at opening in the fall. There is a 21-page document that provides guidance. And within that document, there's laws, there's statutes, there's different policies and direction. But ultimately what I've done is I've taken this information and synthesized it into a quick 2-page to have a conversation and share with you where we're at and the direction we're going. Reminder, I did share this already. We have shared it, gone through it. There has been one substantive change that I will be discussing in detail this evening, but ultimately everything else is the same. Although I will go over all of that as well, just to share where we're at. So ultimately, as we look at this document and have a quick conversation, I'll do a presentation. And then obviously anytime during this, if you raise your hand and or again, it's 2 pages and I won't go through it word by word. At the end, obviously, is we'll open it up to conversations and kind of talk about where we're at and next steps as a district. But the number one, as you see for the 21-22, this is directly from ODE and basically guidance. It states that for the 21-22 school year, schools must plan to provide full-time in-person education for all students every school day. Districts make decisions with their boards and determine local implementation of COVID-19 mitigation measures as laid out in this document. So with that said, I want to communicate to the board and our entire community, that is what we're doing. We are planning to open. We're planning to open for all students every day. We do have an online program. We have options for students, but ultimately our plan is to open up and get as close to a regular, I don't know if that's the right word anymore, or normal, I don't know if that's the right word anymore, but back to school where students are coming every day. It's not hybrid and they're accessing their education in their classrooms. They get opportunities for gym, for music. They'll be eating at school. There'll be, recess at school. So all the things that you think about in school before COVID, that is the direction we're going and the steps we're taking. With that said, to get there, we do know that we have to implement different safety criteria that we didn't have to implement before. And we are required to follow certain guidance. Some of it's advisory, some of it's required. And that's the part where it talks about mitigation measures as laid out in this document. So our plan is to develop and ultimately provide an education in school, much more like what it was in before COVID, but we must follow these mitigation measures to ensure safety. So as you look at that next section, really, again, I'm not word for word here, but return to full time in person. We talked about that. Support schools and health and safety planning to meet, you kind of jumped in front of me, Derek, but that's, yeah, okay, it's fine. Honor and recognize the uniqueness of communities across Oregon, support schools and health and safety planning. Basically knowing that our communities will be living with the virus and widespread until there's widespread immunity. So these are all kind of statements of the direction and guidance. But as you scroll down now, Derek, to that blue box, ultimately what's being shared with us is a layered approach. We know that basically there's a layered approach that we must follow to ensure the safety of our staff and students and visitors and anyone that's within our school. And that layered approach includes, number one, promoting vaccinations. What we're being communicated by OHA and our county health is that that's a number one priority and number one mitigation strategy. Second is protective equipment, specifically face masks, and I'm going to talk about that a little later because that has changed. Third is physical distancing. We know in our system, they're advising us to have 3 feet physical distance as much as possible. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Hand hygiene, the opportunity to wash hands, airflow and circulation. We know the power of that and the importance. Cohorting, making sure we're following, knowing who's in schools, who's around other students as much as we can, and then having a system for isolation and quarantining and what that looks like, and then finally cleaning. So the issue here, for example, we know that 3 feet distancing, and I'll talk about this in more detail in a second, we're not going to be able to do that in every instance within a school, right? The number one priority is to be in school every day. Then on top of it, we're trying to implement 3 foot distancing. But since we know we can't always have 3 foot of distancing, then on top of that, we'll have masks, right? On top of that, we'll be washing our hands many times. So the idea is that layered process, making sure that each one of these is in place as much as feasible. So as you scroll down, Derek, the vaccination I just reviewed, basically that's a statement. This is coming right out of the documentation. Physical distancing, I want to spend a second here because you can see some people get a little bit confused about this because they talk about physical distancing, advising schools to support and promote physical distancing. And then it says physical distancing in all daily activities and instruction, maintain at least 3 feet between students to the extent possible. So that's a key comment there, and key intention is to the extent possible. So maintaining physical distancing should not preclude a return to full-time in-person instruction. So the number one priority is ensuring we're coming back to full in-person instruction, but we should be trying to the full extent possible to make sure we have 3 feet of distance. And that is what we will try to do. But for example, on our buses, we will not always have 3 feet of distancing. In our schools, there'll be times where we are not always at 3 feet, and how we continue to educate students, work with our students to try to get that 3 feet. It's important and we will do it, but we know it's not going to happen every second of every day. The next one has to do with cohorting and the idea of making sure that we have an understanding of what students are with what other students. So if and or when there is a case of COVID in our schools and students and or adults have COVID, we can basically say who has been in close contact or in contact with other students. So that's going to be one of the number one priorities and probably the most difficult thing to try to manage as we come back in the fall. You can think about it, the elementary school. Okay, we're in an elementary classroom, that's one cohort. They're in the lunchroom, that's another cohort. They're at recess, that could be another cohort. They're on the bus, that's another cohort. So there's those different cohorts. And then as you go up each level, those cohorts expand, right? Because as we go into the middle school and high school, they're going to different classes. They are getting the opportunity to take their elective classes. There are different math classes, language arts, social studies. So every level, we get more and more cohorts that we're trying to manage and trying to measure. Next one is airflow and circulation. Very clear there, and thanks to the board for approving last year. We're ahead of the game here. We've actually purchased HEPA filters for every single classrooms. We've updated our air units with higher MERV level filters. We're continuing to monitor those as we move forward. We're also going to be asking staff where possible to open windows and to do instruction outside where possible, use the outdoors whenever possible. During all of the communications, airflow and circulation is basically as much as you can be outside, the better, or the more you can, the better. But ultimately, our board, we have invested in the airflow and circulation last year. So moving forward, it's just making sure that we keep those HEPA filters up, keep the filters changed, keep them in classrooms, invest where we don't have them, if there are any areas, and then making sure we keep the airflow in our buildings at a high level as well with those high numbered MERV filters. The hand washing, I won't go into detail here, but again, thanks to the board's approval, we've gone through and purchased soap and the hand sanitizer. We have enough that will be going around. We'll have protocols around that on what that looks like. Again, the good news is much of this, everything I've talked about, we did get some practice last year with hybrid. It was different. It wasn't every student, but we did every single one of these in the hybrid format. So now we'll be coming back full with all students and just implementing more. Next, Derek, as you scroll down. So this is the one that's changed. This is the one that I think we've gotten a lot of communication around and people asking around, and that's specifically face coverings. We know the previous Rssl guidance had face coverings basically at advisory, and that has changed over the past week. We know, or past 2 weeks, we know it is mandatory. All schools must require student, staff, and anyone that's inside the building to wear masks. And there's a very few instances, where they are not required, for example, at lunch or in music class. But ultimately, we know now that is not an option, it's not advisory, and it's required. I also want at this point just kind of go out and make a statement. Unfortunately, on Facebook, somewhere around our district today, I believe, in our community, it was communicated that if students do not wear masks, that the staff, that David Douglas, and a part of a punishment would be fining families, and that is just not true. No one's ever had that conversation. I want to say this board's never had that conversation. Basically, we haven't even talked about if a student or family refuses to wear masks. That hasn't even been a conversation. But somewhere out there, that apparently might have been on a local radio show and then started to make its rounds on Facebook and social media. I want to communicate to all of our public right now that is not accurate. I think maybe where there could be some confusion around that is there are requirements specifically around face coverings from Governor Brown's order, and there's actually a whole memo from ODE that is enforcement of OAR 333-0819-1015 masking requirements in schools. And in that, it talks about what the enforcement piece is, and there are fines, but the fines are to the district. The fines are like from OSHA. If we don't require our staff, if we ignore this order, then there are fines that would come to the district. But nowhere in here is there anything related to fines for students, and that's not a direction we would go. Donna's asked a question in chat. I just noticed, will hand sanitizer be available on buses? And the intention is yes, that it will be available as students come onto the bus. Basically, anytime there's a transition from a different space, having that sanitizer available, Donna, is what we're looking for. So again, back to face coverings. Face coverings are required. Our understanding from the governor's order, actually in the county, our county chair also made an announcement in the county it's required. And ultimately, my intention is to follow that, to go through the process, and we will require face coverings because it is required. Could that change? Our understanding through the order is that it could change. Our understanding is Governor Brown communicated that if things change in our community with this disease, they could relook at that, but right now it is a requirement. And the last thing that's very specific in the RSSL guidance and the intention, and I'm so proud of our district, is the Care Connect piece. The idea of taking time at the beginning of the school year and throughout the entire school year to truly focus on caring, connection, relationships, making sure we're working with our families during this unprecedented time. And we did that last year. We had a lot of opportunities and connections and really reached out to our families on a regular basis. And based on this, ODE's not only suggesting it, they're telling districts you need to be doing this. And I'm excited because we were already planning that. We were already looking at this, and we were looking at caring and connecting, and we've developed a schedule, still working on it, but developed a schedule that, Derek, I'm going to ask you to show that next document, if you can close this and open it up, that has a model where we're basically going to do staggered starts. We are not going to open up our elementary school on day 2 for all elementary students, right? We're basically going to open up our elementary school with about a third of each class at a time. So it's really kind of a reduced stress level, a lot less students, where teachers can focus on those relationships, those connections. They can focus on reaching out to families. And that entire first week at the elementary, middle, and high, we have a transition week we're talking about, where we're really not kind of this full open, it's more of a staggered start opening. And then finally, the third week we're looking at, so that's the first week of students, third week since staff have been back, is where we're reaching out to those families that didn't show up. Where were they? Are you around? Can we help you? Do you have any questions? And kind of what is that process? So you can see the RSSL guidance. It doesn't talk about math. It doesn't talk about specific instruction. What it talks about is the safety requirements and mitigation. And we talked about it a little bit earlier because Mary actually discussed with you the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity and service plan, which is part of your board packet, that whole report is part of this process and planning as well. So at this point, I will slow down and let you know that that's where we're at with the guidance. Our intention, we're still moving forward. We've had initial conversations with union leadership. We're still basically planning to meet with them weekly as we move forward. I think the biggest wild card out of all of this, if you can imagine, to all the board members, is what happens when we find out that a student, 10 students, 15 students, 20 students have COVID. What do we do? And that's probably the biggest challenge, other than cohorting and trying to manage all of that. Once that happens and the comes back to us and says, these 10 students are quarantined, these 20 students are quarantined, how do we navigate that? And that's what we're currently working on, having conversation with union leadership. Do we go into a hybrid format? Do we go into some sort of synchronous model? Do we look at, what is that process and how does that play out? Do we just go to a simultaneous model like we did with the secondary schools where basically we have a camera on in the classroom? So what Derek's showing you here kind of shows that back to school schedule. You can see elementaries looking at each day, having about a third of the students. Middle school, you can see 6th grade only, 7th grade only, kind of those transition days. High school has a whole week where they're looking at special schedule and specific grades where they're doing orientations. So it's basically just breaking up each grade level and each student body up into smaller groups of students. So it just isn't so overwhelming for our students and our staff and our families, just trying to make it more of a social and emotional learning space where everyone feels comfortable. So with that said, I will open up for questions and basically try to follow up with anything we can't answer today, but that's where our planning is going right now, and we're still moving forward. I guess the last question I might predict is, will anything else change? And as well as I know, I don't know. And when the RSSL guidance came out, they were very clear, we are not changing this guidance. This is it. And as well as I know, 2 weeks ago, they changed it for masks. So the biggest question out there is, if COVID, the Delta variant, still keeps going up, could they make other changes? No one has communicated that there's a plan for that, but there has been at the superintendent level conversations that you should be thinking about that, superintendents. You should be planning on that, right? Because what if? And we just don't know what that what if is. So Stephanie, I'll hand it back to you.
But to be clear, that those are decisions made by health entities, whether or not, people need to be quarantined. These are not district decisions. These are health department decisions. Frida.
I know I'm bringing up a controversial issue. Vaccinations, you know, I'm really a big proponent of these and working with the district on getting information about vaccination. I'm also a news junkie, so I've been listening to a lot of different channels and information and seeing that many state school districts are starting to mandate vaccinations for staff. Have we started the process? I always like to be ahead of the game, at least surveying our staff, because I know not 100% are vaccinated, to kind of get an idea of how many aren't and are, and what people's feelings are around mandating it in case it does come down to that. My big concern is keeping kids in school, especially elementary can't be vaccinated now. So, and with this Delta variant, I'm concerned about a staff member. It might even be someone who's vaccinated who brings it into the school. So I'd like us to be proactive in getting information and talking with our staff now about it in case the governor decides to change something again on us and whatnot. And then I have one other, I guess it's a question. You said the cohorting would be difficult in middle and high school. I was trying to visualizing it, having been in that high school many, many times. And you say you have a student that's exposed or gets COVID. There's no way to find out who they've been in contact. Just walking through the halls, they could have been in contact with a couple hundred kids and not know who they are. So it almost seems impossible to do a contact tracing at our high school. It's going to be hard enough at the middle, but the high school almost seems impossible.
Yeah, that's true, Frida. So your last question first, and that is, right, the one thing to remember for all to remember, it's close contact, right? It's really not just a random walk by in the hall. It is meant as anything 3 feet and under for over 15 minutes is kind of how they define it. So that really then limits, if you're talking passing time, it's more of, are you, I can just imagine the questioning. During a school day, when you're passing times, do you stop and have conversations? And we know our passing time is not even 15 minutes long, right? So technically passing time wouldn't qualify as that close contact because there's a certain time limit around it. But you're right, that is kind of what it comes down to, is what happens before lunch, after lunch, on the bus, at lunch itself, in each class, what group you were in, where were you working in the classroom, and on any given week and any given day, that's going to be a challenge. But again, in theory, what you're saying, I understand, Frida, but I think what they tell us is if kids are just walking through the halls and getting to their next class, that wouldn't qualify as close contact.
Well, then isn't it somewhat out of date with the Delta variant? From what I'm hearing, it can be a 2-minute connection with this Delta variant. So it almost seems like they're behind on that guidance.
Yeah, well, I think what would happen is when that guidance, again, what that would happen, Frida, is if, and again, I don't think it's if, I'll be clear to the board and the community. I do believe when we come back to school, we will have cases of COVID based on what I'm hearing, based on what I'm reading, based on what I'm learning. So what that says, then what will happen is our county health, just like Stephanie said, they go through the interview process, partnering with us, and ultimately they make the decision. And if it changes to 2 minutes, or if they change that guidance to close contact equates to this, they'll be the ones that are monitoring that and making the decision that, yes, you student need to be in quarantine. Yes, you teacher need to be in quarantine. And they communicate that with us, and we help communicate it to our students and staff. So if it has changed to 2 minutes, if it has changed, I don't know about that, Frida. It very well could have. Again, it moves pretty fast. So I'm not aware of that, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. Back to your first question was about, are we in front or getting in front? And we've had the same conversation this week. We've talked about, sure, that question's coming. We've started with the conversation, basically reaching out to legal. Can we do that? What does that look like? What is the pushback? How does it go through the process? And we're preparing to have information for the board available once we kind of go through that process. The second phase is we were thinking about how do we reach out and try to get an idea of who is vaccinated and not vaccinated, right? So we don't have that in place yet, Frida, but that's something that we will talk about. Also, again, conversation with the union leadership that, hey, this question is probably going to come up. Just want you aware, don't want you surprised about it if the question comes up, because we don't have solid plans to say everyone will be vaccinated or not. We've just started that conversation because we believe people will be asking it. We know in the press release that the governor did, she specifically talked about it. She specifically said, as a governor, she's requiring it for all of her executive branch state employees. And she said superintendents could do the same thing for school districts. And I don't know that she quite said she recommends it, but she basically kind of alluded to that. So I have a feeling that question's coming as well, Frida, and we're trying to kind of do some homework around it, but we don't have all the answers yet.
Okay, thank you.
Other board members? Right. Well, anyone who claims to know what's going to happen with this virus is just making guesses at this point. So we appreciate all your work in aligning us with the legal realities. And we feel, I know I feel as a parent, a lot of anxiety around, what is the right decision? Are my kids going to be safe? My kids are 11 and can't get vaccinated. How bad would it be? Do masks help? Do they not? I mean, there's so much we don't know about this virus, but I really appreciate all the work that this district is doing to keep our community and our kids safe. So thank you for your work on that. Moving on to the bond update. Pat, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, that will be very brief. As I mentioned earlier, we did the RFP for the bond consultant. We did select Jeremy Wright Consulting. Last month, I did think that I would have the bond project list to you this month, but we had a few people out in our maintenance department. And so we'll be bringing that in September, which will probably be a good time because Mr. Wright would be under contract by then. So that is it for the bond update.
Great. Well, we look forward to the bond committee getting going. I know most of our board members are on it, and if they're not, they're alternates. So we're very committed to this.
Stephanie, just a question on that. Pat, have you guys started reaching out and putting on the website seeking citizens to be on this committee? Because we should have some residents on the committee.
Not yet, no.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely would love to help recruit those people. Donna, did you have?
Yeah, I wondered where are we with putting together the one-page description to give out for those citizens.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that we're basically been having conversation. Dan's ready to go as we talked about in the previous board members meetings. We're kind of holding a little bit to the fall till September and basically teeing all of that up to go out with guidance. The other thing we were waiting for was the bond consultant, which we now have and will be moving forward with it. So our plan is as we return to school, not only are we returning to school and looking at that excitement and energy as we return to school, but also during that is starting that communication campaign around the bond, which starts with, what is a bond, right? What is a bond? Why is the the bond, kind of that communication and education, and then what some next specs you can be looking forward to, right? Some open dates and what's it look like. So along with that recruitment piece, Frida, we're going to need help, and those individuals that are on standing committees, those individuals that might just want to help with passing out materials, those individuals. So I see that all layered in, and our hope is really kicking that off in September is the plan at this point, or maybe the end of August. We're kind of at the end of August, but that was kind of the conversation and our thinking.
Thanks, Ken. Just to clarify, I mean, I know that in order to be on the board, either appointed or elected, you need to be a U.S. citizen. But as I understand it, you do not need to be a U.S. citizen to serve on the bond committee or other school board volunteer opportunities, correct?
So, Stephanie, I'm gonna have to look at that. I would say
I would love to look at that, because I feel like so many families in our district are immigrant refugee, and may want to participate in this, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's required. So I want to say, and definitely for volunteer and service and supporting, it is not required, right, to be a citizen. So we have volunteers in our schools and at school level committees. A formal board committee, though, is it referenced in the law to be a board member? It is, right? And I don't know if it's somehow referenced. A formal board committee is different than kind of a volunteer committee at certain levels, right? So that's why I'm hedging, and I'd love the opportunity to look in that to make sure I have the right answer.
That would be great. Could
we change it? Because there's nothing saying it has to be a board committee. Could we change it to a superintendent's committee? And that would just report to the board. Then you could alleviate that, and us board members that are on the bond committee could be the board representatives to the superintendent's committee.
Yes, the answer to that's yes. Anything and to be quite honest, even board committees, I don't know that it's required. I just want to make sure. In fact, I'm thinking it's not. But with that said, the answer, Frida, is yes. Anything you set up that's a superintendent committee, or I set up that's a superintendent committee, any kind of volunteer service or committees at the school level, I know it is not required. So we can definitely have the process that way. And so there's different layers, right? And different, and I think even board appointed, I would doubt it's required for board appointed, but I'd want to check, and I will check tomorrow. I'll have that answer.
Yeah, thank you. And just to know if it's something, in Oregon revised statutes or something in our own policy, because if it's our own policy, that's pretty easy to change. And if it isn't possible, Frida's idea of changing it to a superintendent advisory group or whatever it's called would be great. Perfect. Okay, Pat, you're up again, because we're going to talk about testing.
So in your packet, there was a memo updating you on some lead testing that was done in the district. We had some repairs and some upgrades, and none of the areas, I believe, found any lead, but this is just to notify you of what was done and that nothing was found. Are there any questions?
Guess not. All right, now we need to appoint, or in this case, reappoint the Budget Committee Position 1, which is Donna Barber's position, of a corresponding community member who is serving on the Budget Committee. And I believe, Donna, you would like to reappoint Tori Campbell, is that correct? I assume yes, but I can't.
Yes, sorry. Yes, I would.
Button. Okay, great. I don't think that we have to formally vote on this, do we? No.
No.
All right. Thank you for reappointing your committee member for the Budget Committee. I did. So it looks like we are back on schedule, but the committee updates and assignments, the board has actually agreed to them. And Ken and Lori, I sent you and the board the final kind of a committee assignments for the year, who's going to serve on which committees and which schools. Would love to have those posted publicly, especially because the community members might want to know how to get engaged in some of these committees, but also because it lists liaison duties with schools. So each one of our board members has either 2 or 3 individual schools that they've decided to take on as the direct connection between the board and the school. And so I think it would be great for those principals to see who their liaisons are for the year. So if you don't mind, I'd remove this from a discussion topic of the agenda and just post it. Oh. Any objections to that?
No, but are you going to do the resolution?
Number 12. Yeah, I skipped it. Dang it. All right. So it looks like I missed an agenda item. The resolution authorizing amendment number 1 to the 2021-2022 budget for school district number 40, Multnomah County, Oregon. Folks should have this in their packet. Pat, it's back to you again.
Yes, in your packet is an amendment to this year's budget for $1 million in the grants fund. We received notification that the early intervention, early childhood special education program will be receiving some additional funding. They will need to pass some of that through to Hood River and Columbia Gorge to provide services in their areas. So we're asking for a budget amendment so that we can do the contracts for those vendors and spend the funds, the additional funds.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the resolution.
And a second?
I'll second. This is Valderrama.
Christopher moves, Valderrama seconds. Stephanie Stevens votes aye. Frida Christopher.
Aye.
Donna Barber.
Aye.
Wong Nguyen.
Aye.
Aaron Barrow.
Aye.
Andrea Valderrama.
Aye.
Thank you all. That has been approved. So now we're on number 14, which is again, Pat, it's the Pat show tonight. Financial and investment report.
Yes. So in your packet is an update on last year's finances. Our general fund, boy, I did not think we were going to get here. That was probably the wildest year in my 20 years of finance. We made it to the 18.7. Didn't think we were going to get there. There were the areas where we just simply didn't spend. There were some areas where we got some additional funding. There were areas where we got a lot less funding. So you'll see that our utility spending was less. So even though we added all those HEPA filters at the end of the year and increased our HVAC usage, we still had a pretty substantial savings there. We're actually trying to finalize our FEMA claims. Boy, is that a long process, let me tell you. So we will be putting in about 1.1 million to FEMA to get reimbursed. As mentioned in the memo, they changed the policy. And so there was a period of time, it was quite interesting because they kept changing what they would and wouldn't pay for and whether there was a match, and they finally came out and said they weren't going to require a match. So it got a little nuts there. So, but we did see, we will be seeing some reimbursement from FEMA. And then our ending fund balance there is at the 18.7. The technology fund, and so we discussed before the city pass-through. We did get some pass-through. It was less than we anticipated by about a little more than half. And we still have an outstanding E-rate payment. As Derek described before, there's been some delays, and part of that is due to processing, and we have an appeal in for payment. Nutrition services, you'll notice that fund basically is down to zero. We've absorbed those expenses in the ESSER funding or the federal funding to support all those services that were provided last year. The grants fund are just slightly up. We're still waiting. We actually are just finalizing our last claim for last year. In the investment report, you'll see that the cash and investment balances total 21.3 million at the end of the year. You'll see almost a $24 million decrease. As a reminder, we always spend that down at the end of the year. And when we get our state fund payments, we actually get a double payment in July and no payment in June. So they know that a lot of times they try to front load us on the funds. One of the things that I do want to bring your attention to is that interest rate. So I know everybody thought I was probably a little nuts when I went, woohoo, it's like at 2% a year or so ago. It's now down to 0.6%, and actually it has declined again to 0.55% on our investments with the local government investment pool. So are there any other questions or? No? Okay.
Wow, that's a lot of balancing. Good job. Make it all work.
It'd be nice if I had a few more staff right now to help out, but.
Oh, wow, yeah. Thank you, Pat. It looks like we're at the superintendent's report. Ken, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And just echoing the investment and financial report, one thing I want to share to the district and everyone involved, again, one of the main worries, we have a district and I don't like to raise alarm. I don't like to focus on negative, but I want to be real as well. But one of the things, obviously, we're going to be very interested in tracking is our enrollment. It's been continuing to decline. It declined all last year. Right now on paper, technically it's declining, for lack of a better term. It's very hard because it's on paper until we really see bodies and open up. But just kind of sharing that, because unfortunately, if that continues to go down, those are funds and it changes our resources. So just sharing that as part of this, just as a reminder to the board. I don't want to lose sight of that, and we will definitely keep you informed every board meeting where we're at, what we think we know, and what direction we're heading. So anyway, with that said, I want to focus a little bit more on the positive here, or at least recognition. I'll call it recognition, and there's a couple different things. Very first one, Stephanie, if you don't mind, you talked about our board vacancy, and you specifically recognized Director Sahar Maranovich, and she cannot be here this evening, and she has officially resigned her position, but I still want to publicly recognize her in my superintendent's report. And I see our board definitely nodding, because she's such an amazing human being, an individual, and what she gave in the 2 years that she was here was phenomenal. So truly, I just want to say we do have a plaque for Sahar for our board members. I will make sure to get that to her. And ultimately, what it says is the board of directors joins the student, staff, and patrons of David Douglas School District in expressing our gratitude to Sahar Maranovich for 2 years of outstanding service to the community of David Douglas School District. So again, I just want to formally recognize her, thank her, and I will definitely be reaching out to her. We've had a couple emails going back and forth, as I'm sure many of you have as well. And I wish her all the luck in the future. And I truly hope, as she's still engaged in Portland, or if she still stays in Portland, that we get the opportunity to work together for our community and schools, because she's definitely got a passion and a power. So thank you, Sahar, and I hope you are doing very well. The second recognition I like to do, and again, this one could have done last month a little bit, and how, but we have a recognition to say thank you. We have an individual that served as our chair for, I think, back-to-back years, if I remember. So I just want to specifically reach out and say thank you to Andrea. I know you're listening, Andrea, and say thank you for outstanding leadership as a school board chair for both the 1920 and 2021 school year. Obviously, thank you for all your service, but specifically as board chair, serving as board chair back-to-back years, all your voice, your passion, your dedication, your leadership truly has helped guide us over the past 2 years, and a lot of substantial changes, a lot of direction and opportunities for growth through your leadership. So thank you so much, Andrea. I truly appreciate you and your leadership and all you've done, and I'll make sure to get this to you as well. Next, couple things just real quick, just kind of a heads up that next week we're gearing up and we're looking at next this year, next year, whatever it is, but wanted to share with the board that we are planning, and we will have our 45 plus administrators working together next week in what's called Admin Academy. And we're going to be doing that outdoors, right? Because there is 45 of us and trying to be as safe as possible. So the mornings will be in outdoors, and as it heats up, then in the afternoons, we're going to be doing it virtually. But really a focus on equity, focus on our strategic plan. And then based on the conversations tonight, I'm sure you would understand a big focus on our opening plan, right? A lot of operational and opening plan. Along with that, number one priority is that care and connection, really. How are we going to do things intentionally for our families? So just so excited to be back in the same workspace with our admin team and get that opportunity to really kick off the year positively. And hopefully we keep moving in the right direction, and whatever curveballs may come our way, we'll adapt and we'll do what we can for kids. So just sharing that off the top. And then from there, you heard it a little bit, and I'm going to do this in two phases. And one is a little bit of the reality. The reality is that as a superintendent, I want to share with our board that our application pool, our workforce, it is getting difficult more and more. You heard Pat say she has 3 unfilled positions. I know Derek could talk about specific positions in his department that are unfilled. I know Mary specifically has positions. I know in HR, Candy could talk about across the entire district. So we are tracking that. I will definitely keep the board informed. It is real, from bus drivers to custodians to teachers to business offices. It's just there are less and less applicants and more competition with a bigger district to the west of us that has a different pay scale that we've talked about a little bit and we'll be talking about more. And also competition with things like telecommuting and different positions where individuals don't ever have to report to an office again. And in a school system, it's just a little different, right? We are human resource dependent. And, we definitely talked about how we can do things differently, and we'll be talking about how we can do things differently, but just planting that seed. But really, it's kind of, I'm teeing up here is we're going to take a minute. I'm going to ask, because we are ahead of the game a little bit, a few minutes, and we're going to watch a video. And this video ranges somewhere a little over 6, a little under 10 minutes, somewhere in there. But this video is a video that Tay took leadership on around our Grow Your Own program. So you can imagine when we think about the pipeline of educators, the pipeline for staff, we're doing a lot of work through our Grow Your Own. Yes. And obviously, one is because of shortage, but 2, more importantly, to diversify our workforce. So Derek's going to kind of transition us over and get a video in front of us. But while he's doing that, Tay, would you like to share anything? I know how proud you are of this work, and many others, Candy and Darcy, and so many people have done some things. But Tay, if there's anything you'd like to share, I'd love to invite you to unmute.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ken. I just quickly want to say that this work has really always lived in David Douglas' leadership under Candy and Darcy with minimal funding. They were really just encouraging people to use their tuition reimbursement. And as you know, in February, we received a nice grant from ODE to support our GYO program. We just finalized everything for the completing this year's term of the grant. And Colleen, Candy, and myself will be reapplying. It opens up again in September, so fingers crossed. And the unique thing with it this year is that it will run for 2 years before we have to apply again. So what you will see are some of our participants from the GYO program, and also a couple of our administrators. And really the clear message here is that we want to continue to diversify our work, our staff. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Tay. Derek, if you can push play, it'd be great.
Not hearing sound.
Same.
This Grow Your Own program is one of the best examples of a community-driven mission that is seeking long-term sustainable change. No one of us is going to make the difference in our system, but piece by piece, day by day, we can be working to make sure that our systems, that our structures, that our schools represent the communities that we seek to serve.
There is so much inherent value in having our students have teachers who look like them, who represent them, who can connect with them at a level that you just can't if you don't have some of those shared backgrounds.
I want to become an educator because representation really matters to me. As I was growing up, I didn't really see many people that look like me or many people of color until my freshman year of high school, and I thought that was really beautiful because I finally had someone that understood me. I didn't have to explain myself to.
To understand being culturally responsive is much more than just practice and teaching. It's more of a way of life, and be proud of the person that you are.
I really grew up in a school that embraced my Mexican heritage, and we were so loud and we were so present. We had a lot of dances and posadas that were all just Latin oriented. We also had a lot of Polynesian students that brought out their culture in our like assemblies and everything. It was really fun. I never felt ashamed of who I was. So I feel really privileged in that sense that I grew up with mentors and teachers that were either Mexican themselves or embraced that and celebrated that.
I did have a few teachers in high school who were Latino, who were immigrants like me. And I remember feeling especially connected to those teachers and inspired by them. They did give me that sense that I could be a professional, or I could be a person with a professional job. And I just remember the relationships I built with those teachers making a big difference for me in that sense of identity that I had and the possibilities for my future.
The teacher that I had, she shared a lot of like struggles just with me as identity crisis, like not knowing where I fit in because I am Mexican, but it's hard because when I go to Mexico, I'm the white girl, but when I'm here, I'm the brown girl. So it was nice seeing that I had a teacher that had that same struggle.
People of color that are considering education, I feel like our students need you. I know that like students that have gender and race matching role models, they think bigger for themselves, they get better grades, they graduate from high school at a higher rate.
Teachers of color are more needed now than ever before. Not just teachers, but counselors, social workers, administrators. Every single position of education is calling for diversity, is calling for representation, and we are the incident.
A lot of the reasons given for not having a diverse teacher workforce are that there aren't enough candidates. And I think that to some extent that's been the case, but I think that we have to do something about that. We just can't continue to have that be an excuse for why we don't have teachers of color. And so I think the Grow Your Own program is exactly what we need in this district. I think there's so much strength in the David Douglas School District. And when I look at the strengths that my students have, those are the strengths that I know can be cultivated to become excellent educators and excellent educators for the community that they're in.
I went to David Douglas High School, and that's where I was able to run into some role models. Once I went to college and got my history degree, I discovered a lot of answers, and now I needed to provide to my community.
Mi nombre es Andreina Velasco y soy maestra de preescolar bilingüe en la escuela Lincoln Park del distrito David Douglas. Soy la primera maestra bilingüe del distrito, pero no voy a ser la última. A las personas de nuestra comunidad, personas latinas, personas afroamericanas, personas de todo tipo de cultura, especialmente personas de color, los quiero en este momento animar al 100% a que consideren ser maestros en nuestro distrito. ¿Por qué? Porque la mayoría de estudiantes en nuestro distrito son personas de color y hasta el momento no se han visto representados por nuestro personal. Ustedes como personas de nuestra comunidad, personas de color, conocen, entienden de una manera muy profunda las experiencias de los estudiantes y sobre todo los quieren enormemente y quieren que sean lo mejor posible. Entonces necesitamos personas que tengan esa conexión con nuestros estudiantes, que tengan ese cariño, ese respeto con ellos, para que todos nuestros estudiantes puedan tener una experiencia positiva, una experiencia más diversa, más rica a través de su carrera educativa.
Always felt an empty place on the side of me when it came to the world of education. And I knew that having the drive to want to change would give an opportunity to someone else.
I actually have a conversation with my students a lot about if they might want to become an educator in the future. A lot of times it's from the students who you might not expect. I think sometimes I've heard adults talk to kids and say, oh, you'd be a great teacher someday because they're always the teacher helper. They always want to staple the packets or they always want to, erase the board for you or things like that. And I'm sure there's great future teachers in there.
But I think also we have to look at the students you might not always assume would fit that mold. Students who are maybe struggling a little bit with the way that school is and the expectations that school has for them and the way the system operates. And I've had conversations with them about being the one to change it in the future, and that if they see things happening that they don't agree with or that frustrate them, to grow into becoming a teacher so that they can change those things. And that is how our system will change, is from the inside out and from the students who grew their roots in this community.
The reason I'm an educator is growing up, I never felt a sense of belonging in the school system. I was in the B room. When I reflect on those experiences, I always felt misunderstood and labeled. High school is so important because it gave me opportunity to escape from the label. And I feel like everything that I've made with my life now just came from being able to escape the B room and get into mainstream education. It also made me believe in myself, but I didn't believe myself at one point.
I didn't realize the power of being a person of color in an educator role until I actually got into the classroom and saw students responded to me and how much they needed that influence and that model, and seeing someone who looks like them up in front of them, leading them, being a model and guiding. And so I would tell somebody who is a person of color that we need more of those role models.
You have to kind of set the example and lead by example for what you want to see. And I just have to pinch myself every day because I'm in a position to change the lives of kids who look like me and to show them that you can be greater than what you see around you.
I think that the David Douglas Grow Your Own program is a good opportunity for people who already work in Douglas. We have a large staff of classified staff of color who support our students in many, many ways, but they are currently in a position that it is a support, it's an assistance. And I think it would be really important for our kids to see those people work toward becoming that lead and that role model, that teacher in the classroom.
De hecho, yo quería ser maestra o veterinaria cuando estaba en high school, pero por alguna razón o por otra, pues no pude. Y solamente me quedé trabajando, y hasta que Sabrina, she actually helped me to get into this job. And then there I was given the opportunity to join this program and go back to school. So for me, it was like a great opportunity. And I'm so thankful for it.
I think the Grow Your Own program is awesome. I think that our district really has a heart for diversity and for representation. And I love that. I also think that we have to back up our intentions with actions, and the Grow Your Own program is a perfect example of that, because David Douglas values equity and values diversity and values all these different cultures, and they're backing that up by saying, let's support our staff of color, let's support all this staff that wants to be in our district and teach our students.
I wanted to capture the importance of the Grow Your Own program. I wanted to capture the importance of diversifying our staff. And it's time, right? And now we're actually putting action to it, and I'm super excited about it. When we think of our district strategic plan, when we think of our equity plan, all of this work that we're doing now aligns with it. And our students need to see themselves in their teachers. I think it's motivating. And I think it's where we need to be headed. We need to ensure that we continue to diversify our staff, because all students belong.
Thanks, Darius. You can turn it off from there. Tough act to follow. So I will just say, so proud, so excited for the work. Thank you, Tay, your leadership, and all of the voices on that video. So thank you for allowing 10 minutes and allowing us to show that. And Stephanie, that's my superintendent's report this evening.
I don't even know what to say. That was so inspiring. Anyone want to comment? You got a lot of comments in the chat, but yeah.
Well, I'd like to make a comment. I think the video is great. Having the history behind this, quite a few years ago, over a decade ago, they tried to Grow Your Own program, but they only focused on students. We never focused on our other staff, our classified staff, that I think now is so great, because it does twofold. It it diversifies the workforce, but it gives an opportunity for our residents and our own employees to advance in a way they never thought they might have been able to before, because the barriers to go to school, the cost of going to school. So, it's just great that we're able to do that. And it sounds like it keeps growing. So I'm really pleased to say it.
If I may, I would also just like to reiterate some of the comments that I shared in the chat. What incredible teamwork and energy. And it's always just great to see videos of our kiddos again, even in their little graduation outfits. It was just amazing. So thank you so much for all of the work, not only in hearing the voices of our district, but the fundraising, right, that you shared early on that went into really being intentional about growing our own racial and ethnic diversity within our district, and investing in ourselves, in our youth, and our community. As everyone elegantly said, it's so important, and I'm just so appreciative of all of your work and to have you in the district. So thank you.
I want to say, yes, I agree. It was awesome to see, and I'm so grateful for all that you all are doing. The thought that came into my head was David Douglas is changing the game, and that's an awesome thing. You are changing the game, and people are going to have to step up. They're going to have to step up to meet it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I wish we could just end there, but we have one last piece of business this night. We have an action item. It's getting some money out the door for Chromebooks. So I assume, Pat, do you want to give us a brief overview, and then we'll just vote and call it a night?
Yeah, so we had brought to you a $1.2 million request, and this one increased a couple $100,000. As we're going through and trying to collect Chromebooks back, we just want to make sure that we have enough capacity for when the year starts, that we have enough Chromebooks available. So we want to increase that a couple $100,000.
Yeah. So can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. This is Valderrama.
Valderrama, and can I get a second?
I'll second.
Valderrama moves, Darrow seconds, and I vote aye. Christopher?
Aye.
Barber?
Aye.
Darrow?
Aye.
Wynn?
Aye.
Valderrama.
Aye.
All right, it passes. Go and get those Chromebooks so our families have them. And I am going to adjourn the meeting. If there's anything else, email each other. All right, for the good of the order, stay cool. Go splash yourself down if you don't have air conditioning, and have a good night. We're adjourned.